Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
One of our resident chefs.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it is 2:00 and we are actually starting to get a good amount of people popping onto the line. So welcome everybody very much. I will go ahead and get started because if I have learned any lessons from these calls, it is that we are always butting right up to the very end of our time. And there's probably only been one that we actually ended a few minutes early. And the last one that we hosted in October, we didn't even have time to get to our culinary videos, like the actual cooking ones. So I am hopeful today with our two panelists that we'll be able to get to all of the culinary videos as well and potentially have some time for questions and answers at the end too. So thank you all so much for joining our November LoProCO call, which still floors me that we are in November. And I'm very excited to have two panelists joining us today from some incredible organizations, one of which I am repping their shirt. So Ogallala Commons, we have Blaze Diamond joining us, and then Guidestone, Colorado, we have Monica Pless joining us. I've been talking a lot today, got to visit a farm, and it's just been a nonstop kind of day. And then our chef today is Robert Maddock, and he's been with us for quite some time as well, and he'll get to introduce himself when we are moving into his section with the culinary videos. So if you're new to our monthly calls, we just cover topics about farm to school and recognizing that farm to school is not something that is really only done in isolation of a school food kitchen. To really have the strongest like farm to school type of programs, I have seen ones where the school district is also working with the community, working with the teachers, really expanding their reach out and knowing this kind of concept that we like to say, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So know your resources. And that's what we are covering today is know your resources. And this is our part 2. And so last month we had some presentations from an agricultural teacher who runs a horticulture program down in Durango School District. We also had a presentation from a teacher who works in Denver Public Schools, and they teach food systems leadership classes. That was really cool seeing how these kids are getting really excited about the food system and gardening and everything. And then we also had another presenter who came on, and they run garden to cafeteria programs in Nebraska. And it's a really cool, unique model to, again, start connecting the dots between these school meal programs, education, and gardening and agriculture. Because when all of these are happening together, magic really does happen. So I'm excited to have some more resources on the phone so that you all can start learning about what some of these possibilities are and start finding out who in your community is doing work like what these people are doing and who could really be potential resources for you to tap into and support your farm to school program. And since we are in November, this is kind of we're getting towards the end of like peak harvest season for Colorado. And so we're looking at more of these kind of hardy root vegetables, things like beets we're going to be talking about today. And then you can still find fresh pears available. There's also apples out there as well. And right now, you're going to get to see a really cool way that Chef Rob likes to use pears, especially some that might be turning a little bit and turning them into something amazing and delicious. So I think we're going to go ahead and get into it. And I'm going to turn it over to Chef Rob to introduce himself, say a few little things, and then I'll pull his video up and you'll get to watch his culinary video debut.
So my name is Rob Maddock, and I'm originally from Hawaii, but I've been called Colorado home since 98, or pre-traffic is like what I like to describe it as. But I actually had my first cooking job in a school. I was a dish boy. And since then I've progressed. They no longer call them dish boys or whatever have you. I'm getting old, but I spent a lot of time in Napa cooking, and I've been with Live Well for a couple decades now, or at least a decade. And so we want to just kind of give you a couple of interesting ideas with some great ingredients.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef Rob. And let me pull your introductory video up. All right, here we are. Volume should be good if I've done my due diligence, but give me a thumbs up and I will make sure we're solid. Here we are. I got a thumbs down. Let me try this one more time.
While she's doing that, can I tell you how painful it is to watch yourself on film? If you want, count the ums and the okays. I was doing it. My wife started calling me Mr. Mackey. So
let's try this now.
Some local ingredients and some fall flavors. We have pears and we have beets. So let's get at it. Cool. So what we have here is an assortment of pears. There's actually about 3,000 different types of pears, so we're a little short on that today, okay? These are the ones that you can find in your local grocery store, most likely. All right, so here we have the Bosc pear, and then we have the red pear, and then we have the Bartlett pear, and then we have the red Bartlett pear, okay? Now what you're gonna notice here is a couple of these are looking a little rough. This guy right here, because that's one of the challenges that you have when it comes to what you have in your walk-in. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that shortly. Now, as far as culinary uses go for pears, pears can be used just as something raw, as like a garnish, something on your salad bar as well. They can also be roasted, is a really classic one, used in salads, okay, or even used as a marinade. So in Korean food, you'll use a grated pear as a sweetness factor in like bulgogi and that sort of thing. But it also can be used in salad dressings and even soups. So I have two fun facts for you today. First, the pear tree is actually in the rose bush family, which makes a lot of sense because they're very fragrant, right? The other thing is the most expensive pear in the world is a $9 Buddha pear, and it looks like this. Okay, so when it comes to beets, they really kind of funnel down into a couple different types, right? So what you have is you have your golden or your yellow beets, and then you have your red beets. In addition to that, you have striped beets, and then on top of that, you would have a cylindrical beet, which looks like a carrot, and it's this one right here. Anyways, now when you're buying your beets, you can buy them in different levels of maturity. Okay, so right here we have some baby beets, and we have red baby beets, and we have yellow baby beets. Okay, so as they get older, the beet gets larger. So you can have it in the size that's basically this baby beet here, which goes into our larger beet, which is about the size of a baseball, and then you get to the sizes that can be almost the size of a softball. Now, as they get older, cooking time increases, and people will say that the sweetness depreciates as they get older in the process. Now, when you're buying your beets, you can also get them with their tops on, and the tops are actually delicious, but they come in different levels of niceness, right, or of quality in the product. So this I probably wouldn't use. However, I would probably use these beets here, and I would cut them, cook them, and serve them as a side, as a cooked beet, kind of like you would with kale or any other kind of cooked green such as that. Okay, so this is really fun that we're talking about local beets today, because I had no idea that sugar beets, which is a different type of beet, was actually the original Colorado cash crop. And because of that, you can find beets across this entire state. And in addition to that, historically in the late 1800s, when these things were the cash crop, Fort Morgan was the epicenter of the beet sugar economy of Colorado. Beets actually can be made into wine, and in addition to that, they're also considered a hangover cure traditionally. Now, we've already mentioned how you can make beets into wine, which I don't recommend, but you can also use sugar beets to make sugar. In fact, you can probably find this still on your grocery store shelves. Now, if you take a packet of sugar and it doesn't say cane sugar on it, it's worth looking because it very well might be beet sugar and not cane sugar, We can also use beets in the raw form. In fact, if I want to take advantage of those beautiful striped beets, I'm probably going to slice it really thin, chop it up, and put it in a salad for crunch. And that way, it's not going to mute those beautiful colors in that beet. Beets can also be roasted, which is what we're going to do today. They can be boiled. In fact, there's a dish called borscht, which I love, which is basically a beet beef stew, and it's delicious. Now, the other secret beets is that it can be used as a substitute for red food coloring. So if I take these red beets, I can actually take that and utilize it instead of red food coloring in dishes like char siu, or even in sweet items like red velvet cake. And this is all thanks to the beet. So I hope you're getting hungry. I know I am.
Awesome. So that was our first video and the fun facts about beets. And I will say I have successfully made a red velvet cake using beets as the food coloring in there. And it's quite delicious. And it would pretty much blow your mind. There's a little bit of science involved, but it is possible. So I'm going to turn it over now to Monica from Guidestone, Colorado. Take it away and just let me know when to advance. I got your back.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. It's nice to see everybody on here. Like Jessica said, my name is Monica Pless. I'm the Farm to School Director with Guidestone, Colorado. We're in Salida, Colorado. We're about 7,000 feet elevation. Guidestone is a nonprofit that really does agricultural education across the board. And so our four main programs are Colorado Land Link, that helps to connect new and beginning farmers and ranchers with landowners and opportunities to access land. We have our Farmhands education programs, which is education that we run for preschoolers all the way up through adults on homesteading skills and gardening skills. We run the Hutchinson Homestead and Learning Center. So that's a historic homestead that's been around for about 150 years, surrounded by that family continues to ranch there, where we teach a lot of agricultural history and maintain a lot of the homesteading skills that are part of our valley. And then the Farm to School program, which is what I run and what I'm going to talk with you about today. So we can go to the next slide. So I thought I would talk about the Farm to School program, a little bit how it proceeded, and a little bit if you already are in a school, like how you could sort of move outward through some of these different add-ons. So it got started with some folks from the Salida Middle School. First of all, some teachers that were really enthusiastic about getting a school garden where they could bring their students out and get their hands in the soil. And we also run a small sort of teaching garden at Longfellow Elementary School as well. And about 10 years ago, we started working on developing and building out the community and school farm. And I will say full disclosure that LiveWell was one of the original funders that helped us get this started, which of course became Nourish Colorado. And so we're thrilled to keep partnering with them in different ways going forward. The community and school farm is 4 acres of land that is owned by Salida School District. And so that's sort of for the Farm to School program, Guidestone's main partnership is with the Salida School District. Salida School District has about 1,300 students in early childhood through grade 12. And they own this piece of land that we have a 20-year lease on now. And our agreement is that Guidestone, the school district doesn't charge us for the land or for the water or for the electricity. And in return, Guidestone commits about half of the land that we're growing to be specifically produce for the school district. And I meet with the director of food service every year to say what crops are going to work the best that we can grow in our climate here and that work best for them to incorporate into school meals. And then the other half of the food we're able to sell other places throughout the community. We have about 100 frost-free days, and you might, maybe similarly to some of our other Colorado climates, most of those are not during the school year. So a lot of what we grow in the summer, we distribute also through the Heart of the Rockies Regional Medical Center. That's our local hospital. Because we're really set up to sell to an institutional kitchen, it works pretty well for us to also pivot in the summers and sell to the hospital. And we also sell them things that If the school district doesn't choose to use them that week, we offer them to the hospital next. The way our partnership with the school district works, I email all the cafeteria managers once a week, usually on Wednesdays, and I say, this is what I expect us to have available next week. We harvest on Mondays, we deliver on Tuesdays, and then whatever they can see, it's an interactive spreadsheet where they can order, so they can see if I offered 20 pounds of carrots, if somebody's already taken 5 pounds, they can see that there's 15 remaining. And then off of that list, I know what's remaining that I can harvest for the hospital or for other accounts. We also partner with our Salida Boys and Girls Club. We have both a garden club that we host with them in the summer where they walk out usually to the middle school garden, which you can see in the top picture. And then in the fall, we partner with them to run 6 or 7 weeks of a youth farmers market where we bring produce from the school farm or from the school gardens, and some of the kids, this is like 10 kids age 5 to 7 help us sell that produce. So it's very subsidized because we try and charge $1 per item, because you have 10 children in a cash box, it better be pretty simple otherwise. Salida just got a new Colorado Mountain College campus here. And so we've been partnering with them on additional classes. And then we also partner with the city of Salida to help manage 2 community gardens. Of course, a lot of what we do, we're trying to make sure that we're learning and sharing best practices with other groups that are doing similar things. So some of those partnerships that are more regional are like with Nourish Colorado, our Upper Arkansas Farmers Union chapter, the National Farm to School Network, and the Colorado Alliance for Environmental Education. We can go to the next slide. So when Jessica asked me to present a little bit about our Farm to School program, I thought, maybe one of the best success stories is some of the different adaptations we did to meet this changing COVID situation, especially last year. So like many of you all, our schools went totally remote last year, starting in March. And we had been doing a lot, we have this whole production side of what we do in Farm to School, and then also a lot of education where we go into the schools, either into the classrooms or into those 2 school gardens. And either I or one of the Farm to School educators will teach classes in the garden. And so we pivoted to doing a lot of that over Facebook Live videos. So every week for those kids, we did a kid or family activity that was everything from how to use beets. Actually, that was a good example. We used beets to dye Easter eggs, or to read out loud, just like a story that had something to do with either farming or gardening or homesteading. And they were available for free on Facebook Live, but then we also sent it out through the elementary school has a parent resource. And because some of elementary school is hearing from some parents too much screen time, we don't want to do anymore. And then from other parents, they're like, we need more activities for our kids. So that made it a parent's choice about whether or not they wanted to have additional activities and education for their kids. We also did have, our schools did have a pickup where you could get produce. In the spring, it's hard for us to have a lot to offer, but they did a lot of sandwiches. And so they incorporated some lettuce and spinach as fresh greens into the bagged lunches and breakfasts that they sent out. When we went back in the fall of 2020, we went back full time with occasional remote weeks. The school district nutrition service manager was like, I don't even know what they're going to let us do. I can't tell. And I was like, look, Terry, we have it stuff growing. So you say the word and I'm going to send you what we have. And so it was a little bit of a mismatch, right? Because we had planned for what we had planned in our crop plan at the beginning of the year and didn't really know what the end of the year was going to look like. And so the middle and high schools have salad bars that are very popular. And that's been over the years of our Farm to School program, a great place. If we have, a really desirable crop, but we don't have a ton of it. Let's say we have 2 pounds of cherry tomatoes. That's like a bag, this size bag. Well, we can always put it on the salad bar and we have it until we don't have it. But when they shifted to doing all pre-packed salads, and we had to make sure that we had sort of enough of things so that they could be incorporated into all the salads. So that was a challenge, but we were really glad that we were still able to bring a lot of fresh produce to the school districts. We one of the ways we managed our summer, our school gardens in the summer is to run summer camps there. We had to meet like lower to the number of people, so we could only have a max of 6 kids per summer camp. It was entirely outdoors, which in some ways was a really good test. In some ways it was challenging when we do a lot of crafts, and if you're in any other part of Colorado, it's probably also windy, and crafts and wind don't mix so well, but you know, we made it work, and we were really excited to have kids out on the gardens again. And then another pivot that we did, partly because of COVID and partly because the largest farm in our county closed at the beginning of 2020. And they had provided a lot of plant starts for home gardeners. And with all of the, after the lockdown, when there was so much more interest in gardening, we ended up hosting plant sales to try and get plants out to people and have in their gardens. And then we had a donation of imperfect lumber that you couldn't really build structural things with, but we built a lot of raised beds that are, rebuilt some raised beds that are school gardens, and then offered those to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to put in a new garden. And then going back to the Facebook Live videos, we offered a free Facebook Live video on garden techniques every week to help make sure that the people who got started on gardening had a lot of success. I think of this as sort of a lot, I mean, there were a lot of challenges in 2020, but I think that especially like learning how widely accessed the Facebook Live videos were, we got a lot of learnings out of it. And so we are continuing to do the plant sales. We're back in school and have salad bars back, and we're all very excited about that. We're back, went back up to having 14 campers at all our camps. We didn't do as many of the Facebook Live videos because we were really excited to try and build some of these new partnerships with Colorado Mountain College. And so we were able to offer some community education classes. We did a spring getting started on a garden class that was entirely outside and masked. And so figuring out how can we adapt like the programming we're giving to whatever the COVID situation is and whatever is going on in our community. And one of the things that we were most excited about is when we do the classes at the school, whether kids come out to the school farm or whether we're doing classes in the school gardens, one of the most popular pieces of that is these taste tests. And we taste test everything from tomatillos to salad turnips. I'm trying to get people to want salad turnips. And then, you know, it's just a really simple, like, did you love it? Did you think it was okay? Or did you not like it? And then I take all that data and I send it back to the cafeteria managers. And so this is part of my like secret plan to get them to actually take some of the salad turnips, is to say like, a lot of kids liked it and the other kids thought it was okay. And like, nobody hated it. And so, you know, just trying to like find ways that we can incorporate some new crops that, that grow well in our area. And we can go to the next slide and I'll tell a story. One of the campers at the end of camp this year said, we discovered a new vegetable this week. It's called kohlrabi. And so, you know, I mean, I'm not expecting that kohlrabi is going to be a lot of kids' favorite vegetables, but knowing that it exists and that they kind of like it is great. You know, in other years and like ongoing challenges, like I said, we have 100 frost-free days that usually are not during the season. And so to try and extend our season in terms of production and in terms of education, we've put in a big dome greenhouse. We have a couple of hoop houses. You can sort of see one of our hoop houses here. We try and grow a lot of storage crops like carrots and onions and radishes and winter squash, so that we can continue to deliver as far into the school year as possible. This year, we got a USDA Farm to School grant. Actually, in 2020, we received it. And so we built a walk-in cooler on the farm. We had really outgrown our previous cold storage. And we also, through that grant, got funding for a blast freezer that we put in at the high school. And the blast freezer, the idea of that, we also have a little bit of funding, especially this year, to get started with covering some cafeteria workers' times to plant and freeze some of the product that we have when we have a lot of abundance in August and September. And then they can use those frozen things into later in the year. And so they have already started using them because, of course, they don't have that much room in the storage freezer. So you have to sort of start moving through things. But for October was National Farm to School Month. And so on the big on the big day, they distributed something like 60 pounds to each of the 6 schools of zucchini and yellow squash that we had frozen in August so that they could continue to use that. We can go to the next one. So, you know, of course, the hardest part is funding, I feel like, and I'm definitely the most expensive part of this whole project because that personnel usually is. We've been lucky to get some federal grants. So the USDA Farm to School grant, this was probably our 5th time trying to get it. And, you know, like I said, we have about 1,300 kids in our school district. So it's a very small district. And so for us, we really needed to like come down on what we were asking for. You can ask for 50 to 100,000. And I think we asked for like 50,000 and like change. But for us, that like really makes a big difference to be able to like make a big difference in our schools when we only have 6 schools. That one also funds a lot of education. So some of the like things that we're doing around taste tests and like having teachers help develop additional school garden curriculum. We also have gotten a USDA specialty crop block grant. That's more on the production side because it's more ways that we can like promote use of other specialty crops like produce. The 2 federal grants we have, like almost all federal grants require some level of match that's not federal funding. And so it's important for us to balance it out with other things. And so that might be like a foundation grant. We've had some really successful fundraising events like the Farm to Table dinner that we sourced a lot of things from a lot of different farms around here to let people know about our programs. And then our annual pumpkin patch, the Farm to School, sort of our role in that, among other things, is that we grow as many of the pumpkins as we can. So this year we grew about 400 pumpkins. Of course, we sold a lot more tickets than usual, so we ended up needing 1,600 pumpkins. So we're also like buying in from additional regional growers. And then earned revenue, of course, is also a great like matching source. So our plant sales, some of the camp fees and program fees, our produce sales. I didn't mention this, but in addition, we run a small summer CSA that mostly is targeted towards hospital and school district employees, since those are our 2 main partnerships, is building up those partnerships. And then again, our youth farmers market, which is not a huge money maker. It's more about like getting produce into like places that we can't usually, folks who don't usually get as much access. And then because, you know, because personnel is so expensive, one of our biggest sustainability partnerships has been with Healthy Futures AmeriCorps, which works in a lot, they're based in Gunnison, but they have AmeriCorps positions in a lot of the mountain towns. And they have AmeriCorps members who are fantastic, who do a lot of like either farm to school education or farm to school production or farm or food security work. And so, and they really just bring, this is one of our AmeriCorps members with Made by the Pumpkins. They really just bring a ton of enthusiasm and hard work. And I've loved being a part of this program. And so please, if there's time at the end, let me know if you have any questions. Oh, wait, there's more. I have more ideas. I always have more ideas. So I think one of our new ideas, well, not new necessarily, but hasn't totally come into full manifestation yet, is having more internship and apprenticeship opportunities. We have worked a little bit right now. We have an intern who's a nutrition intern who's mostly based at the hospital, but is on like a community rotation now. So she's helping some with some harvest and with taste testing and with our youth farmers market. And she'll be at the school district in January and February. Part of the thing we're working on with the teachers through the Farm to School grant is that we paid 15 teachers a stipend to help develop more farm to school curriculum in the gardens. And that really helps us, like, you know, we've worked a lot with the elementary school and then some with our life skills students in the high school, but trying to get like a little bit broader reach into the schools on what kind of curriculum we're able to do. And then we're going to be working a little bit more on extending the season at the school gardens. Like we've done a lot of season extension work at the farm, but we want to make sure that we're able to get kids out there anytime there's a nice day like today and have more happening there.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Monica. That was great. I definitely have questions as well, but we will wait so that you all can move into the next culinary video with Chef Rob and see what recipes he is making. to share for everybody.
Okay, so we're gonna roast some beets now. Now there is some things you need to know. One, we don't wanna mix red beets with gold beets. The red beet, it's a hog. It's gonna go ahead and it'll bleach the gold beet. The other thing is when it comes to the gold beet, Chef Jessica has a cool trick, which is you wanna add a little acid to it to avoid any black spots that might happen to get you a really nice bright golden beet. Now the red beet, we wanna make sure it's clean from the top and that the greens are removed. We don't wanna cook them together. It's okay if there's still a little stem here because that stem actually can come off when we're dicing later on. Now what we're gonna do is take these beets and we're gonna wash them really good. That is crucial when it comes to these things. So they came out of the ground. And if you cook beets with dirt on them, they're gonna taste like dirt. So now we're gonna do a little cheat to the roasting process. There's these very cool ovens called combis, and we're gonna make a little pseudo combi. The way we're gonna do that is take the clean beets and put them in a hotel pan or a roasting dish. We're gonna add about 1/4 inch of water. We're gonna put some oil over the top of the beets, season them generously, and cover them with tin foil. I would then put them in about a 400-degree oven, and it takes between about 1 hour to 2 hours depending on the size of it. About 1 hour if we're talking about baby beets, about 1.5 hours for baseballs, and about 2 hours for a softball beet. The way you can tell the beet's done is by inserting a fork into them. When it goes in and out easily, you've done it. Now we're gonna take that beet out, and I like to put on a pair of gloves, otherwise you'll have red hands, and pull the skin off the beet, and you have roasted beets. So now we're gonna do a beet hummus, and I love this dish, and I'll tell you why. This dish is a food cost champion. You throw this on your menu mix, and you're gonna see significant food cost savings. So why is that, right? Well, so what we're gonna be doing for this recipe is we're gonna be using chickpeas. That's the basis of pretty much every hummus. And you have some options when it comes to your chickpeas. So you, of course, could use a canned chickpea, but before you decide on that, just hear me out. I use dried chickpeas, and I cook them, and all I do is throw them in a little water, cook them, and because this is going to be used in a puree, I actually want to overcook these things. So I didn't even pay attention. I put them in there, let it rip. I have some overcooked chickpeas now. Now, when you're costing your recipes and you go to that edible yield content, or the edible yield column, and you figure out what is the actual quantity you're going to get out of each ingredient, normally you have to put like a 60, a 40, a 30. With dried beans, it is a 300% yield. Not a 3, not a 30, 300%. So I have a huge yield off this recipe. I'm also going to save the bean liquid, and I can use that bean liquid in collaboration with our oil to achieve the nutritionals that I want. So if I need to cut back on the fat content, I can actually increase the bean liquid, and it still has that good bean flavor in there. So I'm not diluting the flavor. Okay? I'm going to add some garlic. We're going to do a little tahini. We're going to do some cumin in this case, and some lemon juice. You can modify that mother, which is what we're calling it, it's the mother hummus, however you want. And the reason it's a mother is I could then take that hummus, I could serve it how it is. Of course, I'm going to season it. Or I can blend other flavors in there. So we're going to blend in some roasted beets, but we could just easily put in steamed carrots and make a carrot hummus. We could put in hatch chilies. We could put in any other item we want in there and change the flavor. And this could be something really interesting for our customers, guests, or if we're doing catering. So what I'm going to share with you now is a pear and rutabaga soup. And I love this soup because it screams fall flavors. Now, at Nourish Colorado, one of the things we teach is always read a recipe twice. And if you read this recipe twice, what you would see is that at the end we're going to puree everything. So because of that, I'm not going to spend a lot of time cutting all of the ingredients down small into bite-sized pieces because I'm going to puree it at the end. Now this recipe starts off like most recipes, and that is I'm going to start off with mirepoix. So mirepoix, which is onions, celery, and carrots. Now I'm going to sweat that down, and then I'm going to add our spices. So the spices for the soup are cinnamon and clove, and then bay leaf. And what I've done is I actually have it in a ground form right here. And I did that so I don't have the issue of trying to fish out the cinnamon or the clove, but I am going to put the bay leaf in whole because that's a really nice easy thing for me to pull out. So after we've sweat down these spices and our carrots and our mirepoix, we're then going to add a little garlic, and we're going to add fresh thyme. Now, not all kitchens have fresh thyme. You might have dried thyme in your kitchen, and that's fine. The rule or the guide that we use when it comes to going from fresh to dried is you want to use 1/3 of the amount of ingredient if you're using dried, because dried is lighter, smaller, and more potent. So after that, we're going to get to the namesake of this recipe. We're going to use a little bit of pears. Now, what I love about this recipe is the pears in this, the more ripe they are, the better they are. So this could be the last of those pears that are on the back there that you wouldn't dare put on a salad bar, but they're screaming with flavor and you don't want to waste your food costs by throwing them away. Then we're going to use the rutabaga, which is this guy right here. So now the rutabaga, you just peel and chop up. Now you can use this rutabaga in a bunch of different ways. One way is you could roast the rutabaga and make a roast vegetable hash, or in this case we're going to go ahead and puree it. You can also use it as a mash, like a mashed potato kind of item. Okay, so now we've got all our flavors, everything's cooked down, and this all here is actually going to be what we use to thicken the soup when we puree it. And what's great about that is this could be a gluten-free option. You'll also notice that we haven't added any protein to this, or any animal protein. So this dish actually could be also a vegetarian option for you folks. Originally this recipe called for wine in it, but we're not going to do wine. Instead we're going to use a local spiced cider with a little bit of orange juice, and then we're going to use some chicken stock or vegetable stock if you want to keep it vegetarian, and then finish it off with just a little bit of cream. If your nutritionals don't allow for cream, you can use a little milk.
Nice. All right. So before we show you,
can I just a couple things real quick?
Yes, go for it, Rob.
You saw a cameo of Daphne. She came in, the dog. She kept us on target the entire time. A second, we tried desperately to get our hands on the royalties for who we got the beats to play in there. Didn't happen. And lastly, we definitely forgot the bay leaf and started pureeing with it in the pot.
Keep your eyes out for that bay leaf because that does happen. Thank you, Rob. All right. Now it is time for Blaze to come on and share about the wonderful work that Ogallala Commons is doing down in where I am right now, La Junta, Colorado, and Southeast Colorado, and more.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me today. I'm representing Ogallala Commons. We're a nonprofit education and leadership organization. And we have somewhat of an ambitious mission in that we work across an 8-state region from White River, South Dakota, down to the plains of Texas. So anywhere that the Ogallala Aquifer extends, and a little east and west of that. So you can go ahead and change that slide. So how we kind of structured our nonprofit is that we focus on commonwealths that we believe already exist within communities. So how does a community create and capture and memorialize beauty and beauty of a place, like through their arts and their culture? How do they receive different services for wellness, through health? How do they learn? What type of institutions help foster that? How do they produce and process and distribute food in the region? And so what we do is we just want to come alongside a community and actually help them reinvigorate these commonwealths that already exist within their communities. And so we believe that these are gifts from the natural world as well as from human society that support our well-being, that it's a wealth that we actually inherit together, and that we can pass on to future generations. And that these assets increase and decrease based on how they're managed by a community. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Jessica. So we do this through a few different initiatives. We have a lot of youth engagement programs where we've been able to reach over 750 different students through many different events. So we have playa field days that actually take students out to playas, which is a keystone ecosystem of the plains across the Ogallala Aquifer. And we show that these can be incredible basins of water recharge for the Ogallala. They support insane kind of riparian temporal aquatic life, and all the different types of grasses that can have 6 feet plus root systems. So we have an outdoor playa classroom in Texas, and then we also do this throughout other states as well. So that's one way to get kids out and get them messy and get them stomping around in the mud and finding frogs. And so we think it's really important for students to actually have a space that's exploratory and sloppy and nature-based in that. And we also have a internship program that has been able to give over 500 paid work experiences for young adults and in youth and high school. So instead of this model of show up and learn for free, we have a 4-tiered paid internship model that actually keeps students grafted within their rural communities, and kind of helps them use their skill sets and giftings and talents within a specific commonwealth to be place-based. So our level 1 internship is around 100 hours. And then we go all the way to level 4, which is about 500 hours. So what we do is we leverage funds as a nonprofit against community funds in a rural area to provide a paid internship for a student. So we are utilizing relationships with a municipality, which is oftentimes what happens in some parts of Western Kansas, or with a farmer for someone who wants to collect field data, or a nonprofit that's like an urban garden center that needs some extra hands. So any genre like that where someone is willing to partner with us and match us in that space. So we're helping create paid opportunities and keep these stories in these places. So it oftentimes, I came out of an internship about 4 or 5 years ago, working in urban ag, and it exposed me to a whole genre of food shed work that I didn't know was possible. So in stewarding our natural resources, again, that's through our field days. And we also go to like on site to schools. We recently had one in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, where we taught on water and local food. And then we, at the end of the day, we actually took all of our students down to the Pecos River. And it was so small town in that we walked down the street. There was like 3 of us teachers and a couple of routes. We walked down the street and go to the Pecos River, and then everyone just cut loose and they were like swimming in the river. And I was like, only at a rural school could, like, you know, students are like fully clothed, like jumping in the river and then going back to class like afterwards, and the teachers are okay with that. So and then another big part of our food system work is conducting local food summits in providing educational resources. I think the truth is that resilient food access strategies are like shouldn't be always deficit focused. Like label, oftentimes we label these rural areas as food deserts, and I think it's a tragedy when we see them as from the space or lens of deficit focus, instead of acknowledging the creativity and the resiliency that these communities often have in food access. So it's just about walking with them in those relationships and exposing that, and then helping steer that with them. So you can go to the next slide, Jessica. So this is kind of an area of where we work to rebuild local food systems. What's beautiful is it kind of is dependent upon the activity of that region. So right now in southeastern Colorado, we're doing a lot more school-based work in helping with a greenhouse with a local school in Vilas. I just got off a call this morning with a local food producers call that we do from southeastern Colorado, Texas, and northern New Mexico. And we just kind of create spaces for producers to share knowledge. And this morning we had a really incredible group of like matriarchs of the land, you know, that I never knew that you could actually preserve mimosa flowers in like a soft salt brine, and that they were edible. So just this really cool space where we can disseminate knowledge and create intergenerational wealth. So you can go to the next slide, Jessica. Some really exciting spaces that I'm pretty stoked for us to move in the future is actually to develop some infrastructure in these rural communities where we can kind of like sink our teeth into a space and take some risk, whether that's in wash and pack facility or cold dry storage, or actually stewarding some acreage for like beginner growers, because we know there's like an equity to access oftentimes for young producers. So that's a space that we want to jump into. We've been working with Alice Cahill, who is from Kansas, and she developed this really beautiful model within this 4 township that she lives in, where they don't have any like kind of brick and mortar stores for food access, and so they started a little market. And she actually put like pen to the paper and found the data of what it would take to support this region of Kansas, but to growing methods that are unique to that space in Kansas. So like she developed this idea called topless high tunnels, where she gets quite a bit of rain in Kansas. So it's like these kind of open air high tunnels that allow rain to come in, that allow pollination, that are going to collapse under like a heavy Kansas freak snow that's becoming more common. And so we realized, like, by being involved in so many areas of the Great Plains, it's having the nimbleness and the creativity to meet the communities in like a culturally relevant agriculture that is specific to them. So for that part of Kansas, and working with Alice Cahill, you know, it's creating a food access space based on growing methods that may look like topless high tunnels. So, and then like helping steward that and lift it up. We do a lot of work on like virtual platforms as well. We started a certificate program this year online that walks students through the Commonwealth ideas in their community, and helps them stay in place, but be exposed to, again, like different career paths and to grow in a specific area. And then we have an online e-club or e-entrepreneurial program that actually helps promote like young high school students in entrepreneurial efforts. So we have a student right now who started Birthday in a Bag, giving birthdays to like classified homeless or lower socioeconomic class in different schools, and working with actually like local school administrations. And so we just kind of meet students in those passions and help them move forward in that. Our mobile food shed idea is something that's been birthing this past year, in actually like having a trailer that is a tool that we can go into these communities and show root systems of plants and show healthy soils and show composting methods and just try to kind of create this like really fun, whimsical tool to go into a region and show people what's possible. Because, you know, we often go into spaces where like I work with these 3 students from Silverton who they're surrounded by like monoculture cotton or some monoculture thing. And it's like showing them the possibility of what ag could look like in a different light. And of course, emotional resiliency and climate futures. And so just creating those spaces where we can emotionally process changes that we're actually experiencing, and provide emotional toolkits as we go forward. Some of our funding partners are like the Colorado Health Foundation funds a lot of our work in southeastern Colorado. The Tecobas Foundation focuses on Texas. The Amarillo Area Foundation helps us focus on the 16 county regions of the Panhandle. So it's kind of dependent upon where we're working is where our funding sources come from. So we have to kind of navigate that, and that's kind of complex, because when we want to, like, we started to work in Hardin County, which is top northeast corner of New Mexico, and one of the largest counties in New Mexico, and they don't have a single grocery store or farmer's market, or there's 2 little towns in this county. So to like begin working there, we are going in building like regional relationships in that space. So yeah, we work in kind of a long-term mindset. So it's, you know, as the Ogallala is our heartbeat in our life source. Like we want to practice that stewardship that helps sustain life for many generations to come. And this is a quote that I wanted to end on that I really love. We work in a lot of communities that you know, are experiencing a lot of hardship and droughts and removal of youth, and we think by giving them an opportunity and by showing them a different relationship with land, that you know, we can create something that's really vibrant and that will outlive us. So thank you so much for allowing me to share today.
Thank you as well, Blaze. And I love this quote. When I was reading it the other day, I was like, this is absolutely beautiful. And it gave me goosebumps. It resonates. So thank you for sharing that as well. So in the essence of time, I'm going to quickly ask if anybody has any questions before we show the little final closing video with how everything came together and how delicious it is. And you can type them into the chat box if you want, or you're welcome to unmute yourself as well. And there's no pressure either, because I know that many of you all like to just listen, and that's why we have turned these calls into listening and learning calls, more so than making you all do like breakout rooms and participate, because I hear you and I recognize that. So I'll give just another little quick quick little second or two to see if anyone pops anything up, and you're welcome if something comes when we're showing this closing video to type it into the chat box as well. And again, these calls are recorded. They're going to live on our YouTube page, and I'll be sending out a follow-up email with contact information and additional resources as well, because the call that Blaze was talking about, I was really sad to miss it this morning. But I'll share links and how you can get connected into those too, because they're great calls. And I'm always learning new things, especially from the farmer's point of view, which again, being a chef, I am always learning things about them. So let's go to our culinary video. I have to pull that up.
So here we have everything we did today. And starting with our beet hummus, really beautiful color. And that color can change with how much beet we put in there. And you know, when I suggested carrots or hatch, those are all items that would change the color, and it's very easy for people to discern what it is. So here's an example of an idea that you might want to integrate. It's a grab and go. We have a grain in there and some veggies. Looks really nice. Over here we have our soup, and actually, funny enough, we didn't add the heavy cream in it, and it's delicious as is. So if you know the fat content is an issue with nutritionals, this is definitely a recipe that you can go ahead and do without the heavy cream or milk. One of the things that I think people find overwhelming, and it's not necessarily so, is the idea of garnishing, right? And so what I did is I did a couple of really easy garnishes. Granted, like the whole idea of Top Chef and some person with tweezers laying down garnish on food, it doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of applications, including most of the restaurants I worked in. So we came up with a couple of really easy garnishes that we threw on top here. Here's just a chipotle sauce. You know, that would just be that canned chipotle with the adobo sauce pureed. And you can put it in a squirt bottle, or you can put it with sour cream and just hit that dish really quick. And then we threw some toasted pumpkin seeds on there. Pumpkin seeds make sense because we have some cinnamon and we have some clove, and that's kind of those flavors you'd really see with pumpkin seeds. But more importantly, when you're garnishing stuff, it should always have a reason for being there. Besides, it looks good. So in this case, a little bit of spice and some crunch. And keeping that crunch theory, we go over here where we added some fresh green onions to bring some freshness in there. But we also threw some croutons. Again, I'm a food cost guy. I love croutons because I always have what I call orphaned bread around the kitchen. And I can take that orphaned bread, and if it's stale, even better, and toast off some croutons. And that's as simple as someone ladling soup in and throwing some croutons in there. And now we have a crunch, we have some flavor there. Lastly, our little more artistic version, we brought that pear, we sliced the pear, we threw the pear in there, and because it's fall, we threw some pomegranate seeds. So if you find yourself having some pomegranate in the kitchen, and maybe it didn't go over so well, or it's just kind of a hassle, throwing a little pomegranate seeds in there really changes it. And you know, the be-all, end-all is maybe 9 out of 10 people don't recognize or don't appreciate it. But if you can get that 10th person that goes, wow, we really had something special today, or has some effort in it, that's what builds really good PR for your program and customer satisfaction, really by keeping your food costs, your operation costs simplistic and straightforward. I hope you've enjoyed this today, and thank you for your time.
All right, so that was Rob's debut, and we are wrapping up our call. Don't see any other questions popping in, but I'm happy to stay on the line for a little bit longer. Quick little plug for our next call. We are doing a holiday special with a live culinary demo with Chef Shelly, and we're going to be showing you 3 quinoa recipes that could be delicious in your holiday meals that you're doing, including a cookie. So this should be a fun one for you all. If you're interested, we're doing a special time and doing a little trip down memory lane, and just all of that beautiful quinoa growing in the San Luis Valley. It's actually really special to Colorado. So thank you all again so very much for making time to join us. I'll be following up with all of the good details and recipes for you all, probably by the end of this week, if not next week, because I am on the road this week. And feel free to reach out if you need anything. Thank you again so much to Blaze and Monica for joining us. I loved learning more about your programs. Appreciate you both. And thank you, Rob, for an excellent video as well. Happy cooking, happy farm to schooling, and happy Wednesday. Nope, it's Tuesday. I am already one day ahead. All right, enjoy your day. Thank you all so much. Cool. That was great, Blaze. Thank you. I actually learned a handful of things, and I would love to go to one of those playa days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me today, Jessica. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it as well. So thank you so much. And I love that quote and look forward to continue to working with you.
Awesome. You too. Bye.
Bye. All right. Bye, everybody. I'm turning it off. Enjoy the rest of your day.